Hey, lots of news coming out of Australia regarding the NRL, and Penrith being one team saying that if the season is not completed, that they could go bust. And it raises questions about the governance of the NRL and the finances of the NRL as a whole, because not all clubs are financially scuppered. Some clubs are very well run, like the Roosters, and other clubs like the Rabbitohs have very wealthy owners, and the Sea Eagles as well. Russell Crowe's worth quite a bit of money, so he can dip into his pocket and support his team. But Penrith have come out very publicly and said, look, we need more certainty, we need some help, because we may no longer exist a couple of months down the line. It does raise the question of Todd Greenberg and the NRL and the Australian Rugby League Commission as well about the financial governance of the sport and the league, and also the transparency and where's the money going. Because we know they've signed this big TV deal with Fox and Channel 9 worth 1.7 billion Australian dollars. That's a fair chunk of change. It does raise the question where all the money's gone and why the NRL doesn't have a financial safety net for when there is possibly an issue with a season being suspended for whatever reason. And just imagine this. We know that the pre-season and the build-up and training and pre-season was disrupted by the bushfires and the flooding that Australia has experienced in the last 9 months. We know that has had an impact on teams' preparations for this season. It does beg the question, let's say that happened during the season, while the NRL doesn't have a financial safety net should like a natural disaster befall Australia, for example. The fact that we are where we are because of a pandemic is irrelevant, I think, in this case. It does highlight issues with the financial health of rugby league in Australia and New Zealand. We're having the same problems here in Europe with the Super League. Players in the Super League are facing up to a 75% pay reduction in order for the sport to survive. Now, estimates vary about how much money the NRL could lose, depending on circumstance. If they were to get the season restarted, it would be a shortened schedule. We know this. Now, if they are allowed fans back in stadiums, they will lose less money. If they have to play behind closed doors, we do know that the rough approximation that the NRL have been candid about is 100 million Australian dollars they will lose. If, however, they lose the entire season and they cannot play games, it's 500 million Australian dollars. So questions have to be asked of Todd Greenberg, questions have to be asked of the NRL's finance department and of the Australian Rugby League Commission as well. But at the moment, the NRL has stated that it has some money to get through the next 4 to 12 weeks. After that, all bets are off. And we don't know how long the Australian lockdown is going to last. We do know that in the Northern Hemisphere, that in China the virus has abated, and only new cases of those coming back into China that are testing positive. So we do know that a 3-month period is generally what's going to be needed to combat this viral outbreak. But can the NRL hold on that long without outside assistance? Because when clubs like Penrith are coming out and saying we could go bust if play is not resumed, and talk of up to 87% pay cut for players. Now, bearing in mind, we have to factor in the pre-season and the regular season. Teams are 5 months into their contract cycle. So there's 7 months left on players' contracts for this season of what their pay bands are. So 7 months at reduced pay. Now, not all players are obviously on the same amount of money. You've got the marquee players on the big money, and then you've got those players on less cash. And if they take an 87% hit on their wages, they might have to give up altogether play. So we are going to have a different NRL when we come out of this. What it looks like, would it mean less teams? We know that certain teams have had financial problems. And the ones that are generally highlighted are the Gold Coast Titans, West Tigers, Cronulla Sharks, Penrith Panthers, and the New Zealand Warriors to a point. They're the 5 most at-risk teams financially that have had known histories of financial instability or weak finances. Now, Cronulla are in a very unique position as they own their stadium. So they have assets in which they could, sell or lease out in order to make some kind of revenue stream. All the other clubs do not own their stadiums. They rent the space that they play and train in. So this is a really unique position for Cronulla, which could save Cronulla from going bust. The other clubs, it's a lottery at the moment what's going to happen. But the NRL is in discussions with the federal government, we know that, about possibility of having assistance. And they seem to be positive discussions. And the NRL are winning the PR battle, because if you look at the AFL, they're not winning the PR battle. And the way that players and clubs have said, "Oh, we put this fundraiser on for the bushfire relief. We've done this. We deserve a bailout." Where the NRL are having discussions about, what kind of compromises they have to make. I don't think the players will fully take an 87% pay cut. I think it will vary. I think there'll be some variables in there. I think it will depend on club to club. Some clubs are better run financially than others. You just have to look at the Roosters, for one. The Broncos, they have money. We know that the Rabbitohs, Russell Crowe is quite a wealthy individual. The Sea Eagles, their owners are worth a lot of money. So some clubs have a financial safety net, but clubs like Penrith, which are a prime example, really do not. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next coming weeks. We know the NRL will run out of money by May, June time. There will be no cash available to assist in bailing out clubs. So it's really interesting. It does raise questions, though, about the governance of the sport in Australia and New Zealand, and Todd Greenberg's running of the NRL, and the financial side of things, and the Australian Rugby League Commission as well. But we'll have to see what happens. But I think the NRL could look very different in 2021. We may have less teams. Teams may have to mothball for a season. We may have a changed schedule. And it also depends if State of Origin can get played at any point. If they can play State of Origin, that can mitigate some of the financial losses. But again, that's a big maybe. I know they've moved it to the end of what the season would have been, so October, November time. But that is a big if they are actually going to be able to play State of Origin as well. Bearing in mind that these players aren't playing right now, therefore they're not match fit, and they're more likely to incur injury if they were to rush back. So a lot of permutations. But for now, it's going to be interesting what happens. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.